Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to testify today about some of my priorities within the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee's jurisdiction. I represent a vast and diverse district, Colorado's 2nd Congressional District. It's bigger than the state of New Jersey. It stretches from Boulder to Fort Collins and along the Front Range of Colorado up through our mountain communities. The infrastructure needs of my district are as diverse as the geography of the district itself, which is also rapidly growing. In my district and across the United States, our infrastructure is no longer able to meet the needs of the population and is in desperate need of repair and investments. In Colorado, there are more than 450 bridges and 3,600 miles of roadway that are currently in poor condition. The state's infrastructure received a C- on its infrastructure report card, illustrating the dire need for these investments that we are talking about today. There are a number of projects that are shovel ready and that we will certainly advocate for as we work on the infrastructure bill in the months ahead, in particular, including improvements on Northern I-25 and on I-70 and the Floyd Hill project in my community. And I appreciate the opportunity to highlight those priorities among others for the committee. I also want to talk about the importance of resiliency in our infrastructure. As many of us have seen in our districts, natural disasters are continuing to increase in number and severity as a result of climate change. In the last 10 years, extreme weather events have cost my state, Colorado, $50 billion in damages. In my community, many communities are still recovering from devastating flooding that occurred 8 years ago in 2013, and now from the first and second largest wildfires in recorded Colorado history, which burned in Colorado's 2nd Congressional District last summer and last fall. We have to prioritize resiliency when building and rebuilding infrastructure to ensure that we're building, that what we are building will be able to withstand the challenges of climate change. I want to thank the committee for the work that you've already done to prioritize resiliency, and I would just ask you to respectfully consider my Climate Resilient Communities Act legislation in the upcoming infrastructure package. The bill would require a study on the benefits in prioritizing resiliency at the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA. I was glad to work with this committee and with Chairman DeFazio in particular last summer to include this bill as an amendment to the Moving Forward Act, and I would hope to work with you all again this year to include this bill in the legislation. Secondly, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the Wildfire Recovery Act, which is a bill that I introduced on a bipartisan basis with Representative Curtis of Utah, and I know it's incredibly important to the chairman, Chairman DeFazio, as well. The bill is a recovery, or rather as a result of the large fires in Colorado and many communities in the West, including in the states of Oregon, Nevada, Utah, and California, experienced last year. Driven by community concerns about meeting the cost share requirements for Fire Management Assistance Grants, FMAG, from FEMA, which supports firefighting costs related to wildfires, this bill would allow for flexibility in the federal cost share for FMAG and direct FEMA to issue guidance for raising that cost share. For communities working to recover from wildfires and really facing a lot of budget pressures, flexibility in the federal cost share for the FMAG program would be a huge help. And I hope to work with you and the committee, I should say, in terms of including this effort in the upcoming legislative package. Lastly, I want to mention another issue that is certainly very important to my district, which is train horns and quiet zones. The train horn noise and quiet zones issue, I know, has percolated before this committee on occasion in the past. Last year, I worked with the committee to include an amendment studying train horn noise and additional measures that can be used to qualify for quiet zones. I think many members will attest to this from feedback they've received from their communities, that the quiet zone process can be very arduous and confusing for small cities and communities and counties working on these applications. And so this amendment would provide much needed clarity for those communities. And I would hope that the committee would consider including that amendment, which would reduce the burdens on communities and increase the transparency surrounding the quiet zone process in ultimately the final infrastructure bill that is approved by the committee. In closing, I want to thank Chairman DeFazio and Ranking Member Graves for the opportunity to testify before you today. And I want to thank you for the many opportunities you provided for members to engage in the infrastructure and surface transportation reauthorization projects and the exciting opportunities provided with member designated projects. And I also want to thank in particular the staff of the Transportation and the Infrastructure Committee, who have just been so incredible to work with our team in ensuring that we highlight these various priorities, which are incredibly important to the people of Colorado and ultimately the people of our country. With that, Mr. Chairman, I thank you for your consideration, and I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back.